Good afternoon, but I digress. No, just kidding about that. We're getting right down to business here. Good afternoon. We are doing it live and doing it more at 4 weekday afternoons. Live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks closing with back-to-back gains today. Reason for celebration, the Dow coming off its highest point of the day. We were up about 1,100 points early on after a rally that was sparked on hopes of easing U.S.-China trade tensions. This after the Wall Street Journal had a report out that the White House is thinking about cutting tariffs on certain Chinese imports to tone down the trade tensions between Washington and Beijing. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 420 points, settling at 39,607. It had been up about almost 1,200 points during the trading day. As a matter of fact, the S&P 500 did finish higher today by 88 points, settling at 5,376, and the NASDAQ rose 408 points at 16,708. Tesla, among the stocks rallying today following its earnings news that came out after the closing bell yesterday. Tesla shares closing up nearly $13 at $250 and change. Big Blue, IBM, contributing to today's Dow gain, moving up more than $4 at $245 and change. NVIDIA, the Magnificent One, also on the rebound today, up nearly $4 at $102 and change. Today we heard from the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who seems to be calming the market somewhat. He told reporters there is no unilateral offer at this point from President Trump to reduce tariffs against China. This after the Wall Street Journal reported the Trump administration was considering cutting its tariffs on Chinese products, but the president had not made a final decision. We also saw reaction in the bond yields today. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.39%. Federal Reserve out with its Beige Book report on economic conditions across the country, saying there was little change in economic activity, but detected widespread anxiety around trade policy as businesses and consumers responded to the president's tariffs policies. Gold dropping big today, biggest one-day percentage drop since June of 2021, as a matter of fact. We did see a gold pop above $3,500 an ounce this week. Right now it's hovering at around $3,323. Auto stocks also in focus, with shares of General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis moving higher, and after hours trading this afternoon on the reports that President Trump plans to spare automakers from some tariffs. All this back and forth between the U.S. and China, big part of the wild reactions we've seen in the financial markets lately. I'll discuss what's happening related to China with China expert Gordon Chang, Gatestone Institute senior fellow, author of numerous books, including Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, The Coming Collapse of China, and the list goes on. Gordon Chang on X at Gordon G. Chang will be joining us live later this hour. Also, we're watching what's happening locally here. The City of Angels could soon be laying off 1,600 employees based on the new nearly $14 billion Los Angeles City budget blueprint announced this week by L.A. Mayor Karen Bass. That's because she says the city faces a nearly $1 billion budget deficit. The L.A. Fire Department budget, now slated to go up nearly 13% in her new proposal, include 227 new positions in the fire department. The police department expected to see 400 civilian members cut from the ranks. I'll take a closer look at all that later this hour with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member, retired LAPD sergeant, and current reserve officer and tireless champion for the City of Angels. Dennis ZINE will be on the line live with us later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, tariffs, gold, crypto, the whole works. Now joining us live, investment expert Bryan Perry at BryanPerryInvesting.com, senior editor at Eagle Financial Publications, author of the 25% Cash Machine, longtime financial advisor, currently chief investment strategist and portfolio manager for New York Money Manager. Bryan Perry, thank you very much for taking the call here today.
Always a pleasure, Frank. And we are in a market here where there's I think there's a pivot about to, we're underway right now. A couple days ago, the big moniker on the street was like "Sell America," the big "Sell America" trade. It was put out by Bloomberg and all those that just, hate the Trump administration and all things about it. And that was making the rounds, and, the dollar was down and gold was, hitting new highs. And, it was being reported that, there's, a big, movement to reduce U.S. holdings here in bonds and stocks and unwinding leveraged positions. Obviously that was happening for sure. But what we saw today was a follow-on from yesterday. Thank goodness we had 2 days in a row where we got some really decent price action here. But more to the point, we've got a bifurcated market here where business investment is actually pretty healthy here. Having the luxury now of a few of these earnings reports come out here by these big tech companies here, where Texas Instruments, Lam Research, Amphenol, Vertiv, SAP Software. They are seeing no slowdown in business investment here. In fact, they up their numbers here going forward here. So, to dispel some of the garbage that's been out there regarding, how bad things are, not really happening when it comes to these companies reporting, where the soft data, meets the hard data. And the soft data has been ugly, in the surveys, because the financial media for the most part is really talking down the economy, really talking down the future, that employment's going to soar, the dollar's going to crash, interest rates are going to rise, inflation's going to reignite. It's just, most of that is not happening. And at the same time, the tariff thing is a very fluid situation, and it's going to have to, but we're starting to see a dialing back of that because, Trump has seen the pressure points in the market. He does care about the stock market and the bond market. And we're seeing some of the guidance here that we know as long as we reach deals, the business of coming at it full force and then trying to force negotiations is what he's about. But at the same time, the market's starting to see through that. I mean, I think that the old saying of sales fixes everything there's some truth to that, because now we're starting to see this in the form of sales and earnings numbers here in first quarter, and also what more importantly is the guidance by companies saying, yeah, we see the tariffs out there and all that, and it's going to affect about 10% of the economy, but business is pretty good, and so therefore I think the market's starting to kind of warm up to the fact that, hey, maybe things aren't as bad out there as we all seem to think they are, and I find that to be we'll see more of that here as we go forward here, because all the big cap tech names have not reported yet, but that's forthcoming here. Today you saw Tesla, kitchen sink it, and with Elon saying, I think I got to get back into the factories and start wearing my hard hat again here to make some cars. So that they were able to turn that stock around after they missed every metric on the book. But other companies like GE and and 3M and United Rentals. These are industrials here, and they put up great numbers here. And this is on the heels of the money center banks, Frank, and also Netflix having a banner quarter. So things are shaping up better than people thought, and I think the market's here trying to bring back a risk-on attitude.
Very interesting. We're on there live with Brian Perry at BryanPerryInvesting.com. It's great to have you with us here, Brian, and thank you for that very thoughtful analysis as always. What about Tesla here? A lot of noise, of course, around Tesla and that blowout to the negative earnings report, and the stock rallied here. Looks like Tesla investors heard what they wanted to, that Elon Musk will be spending more time at Tesla soon and less time in the federal government working on his Doge initiative. What do you see ahead here for Tesla?
Well, Tesla is more than just a car company. I mean, clearly better than a third of their revenues come from cars, and everybody's desperately waiting for this $15,000 to $25,000 robo taxi car that they has been in the works for a long time now, and maybe that'll be forthcoming here sooner than later, because Waymo's got a big lead on the whole robo taxi business right now. But Tesla makes easily the best EV in the world. And I think that's one area where Elon's going to address that, along with just a consumer vehicle that's around $30,000 here, because the tax credits are going away, and he's going to make these cars more affordable. There are other businesses are booming. The storage wall business and the battery business are doing extremely well here. So what's going on in China has plummeted. They're a victim of BYD, which has done a great job of taking more market share there. They've grown their market share by 36%, where Tesla's market share has dropped by 13% in the last year. So Elon does need to get his Tesla baseball cap on and get back into the business of making this company great, because it is a great company. But it does need his leadership and his focus and his vision and his from the standpoint of his ingenuity is just amazing when he puts his mind to it. So I think that the stock down here at 251, it closed up 13 points, around 5.5% today, is a pretty good bet, on the future, because he's not going to let this company fail, and he's the smartest guy in the world.
On the air live with Bryan Perry. And what about the other automakers? Seem to be getting a lift this afternoon here. GM and Ford and Stellantis, obviously very tariff-sensitive names here, moving higher after hours on the report that President Trump plans to spare automakers from some tariffs. Would you be touching any of the other automakers at this point?
No, I would not. I've trading car companies in the past has never really proved out to be, a really big winning formula for most people. GM's gone out of business once already, and then was taken off the Dow Jones. I just think it's a not a great business. I mean, the only car company I respect outside of Tesla out there is Toyota. They own their market, and people trust that name more than anything in the world. So Ferrari has also been a great name if you want to go to the high end, because they're sold out for 2 or 3 years, on their high end models. So, but that's about it, Frank. I just, this is an area where I avoid, generally speaking, because it's so cyclical and so intensive when it comes to global supply chain, and the margins are just not as thin unless they sell nothing but the best, most tricked out SUVs. Then their margins are pretty thin.
All right, let's get more of the exciting stuff here. Bitcoin and the other cryptos here rallying this week. Bitcoin back up around 93, 94,000. Even the Trump meme coin got a big jump today as well, which was interesting. Ethereum back above 1,800. Doge also getting a pop at 18 cents. Let's start with the cryptos here. Bryan Perry, any thoughts about the crypto action here today?
Well, sure. When the dollar got down to where it was, which is, it's down around a 3-year low right now, the dollar index here, and gold got as high as it was, then this is a catch-up trade, for cryptos here, primarily Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. I would say they're the three, ones that matter the most to that crypto market where there's large money. And, with that said, Trump has already, championed the fact that we want to be the crypto de facto nation out there. It just started to take on a new tone here, and we were talking about, Bitcoin, looking fairly cheap down in the low to mid 80s now. Now we're back to 93.5 today, 93,500 here as we speak. I just think it looks like, the money's coming back into crypto. It missed for the money that missed the gold trade. This is again a catch-up trade here. Now with gold pulling back and crypto moving north, that's an interesting dynamic, because gold is seen as a safer haven than crypto. So, and again, crypto tends to trade with the Nasdaq. So it's considered an alternative to owning the currencies, but it's also tied to risk, much more risk than, whereas gold is more of a risk off. And I just see that as kind of an interesting relationship, because even though the Dow pulled way back and the S&P gave back half its gains, the Nasdaq was strong all day, and therefore you have a high correlation there between the Nasdaq and cryptos. And so therefore that same kind of money, that hot money that wants high alpha, was in crypto today full force, and it had a good day. It's had a really good week.
On the air live with Bryan Perry, investment expert at BryanPerryInvesting.com. And what about gold here, Bryan? Big pullback, one-day pullback today. Right now hovering just above 3,300 an ounce. It had been above 3,500 earlier this week, and we've seen some pretty bold predictions lately on where gold goes from here. Some predictions have put it above 4,000 pretty soon. What do you see ahead here for gold?
Well, it just went up too fast, too quickly here, and now you've got a technical pullback underway here, which is fine, and it's healthy for the market, because it's a good sign. We didn't want to see any further parabolic move out of gold here, because that would just really spell bad for the rest of bond and equity markets. The GLD, which is what I trade, is that it got up to 317.63 as a high. It closed today at 303. 20-day moving average comes in right around 290, 295. Wow. And I think that's kind of where you're going to get you may fill that gap. And if we fill that gap, then people should, really take a look at buying some gold. And as I've said, own some, trade some, because now it's a volatile asset. And so therefore you have a good shot here for a further down. If the market does push higher here, with these earnings coming out here, especially after the close today, we had some good numbers. Then you'll see a further pullback in gold and a further risk-off attitude. But certainly that is a powerful, powerful bullish chart here. And at 295-ish on the gold, on the GLD Spider Gold shares ETF, that's one for traders and investors to take. I think to take a position.
And here's something we haven't talked about in a while: oil, around 62 a barrel now. Where are you placing your bets as far as oil is concerned?
That's a hard call because even Trump with this new big beautiful bill, they're going to try to expand the production of oil even further, and below $60 a barrel, it really makes it hard for any producers in the U.S. to make any real decent profit. So, you be careful what you wish for if you're in the oil business, because the extraction costs are relatively high. I think that right now, but it bodes well for the refiners and those that are doing everything from lubricants to jet fuel to diesel fuel to chemicals and things like that. In the paint business, all the petroleum-based products here, and that's a company like Chevron. Chevron is paying a 5% dividend in here, and recently the stock, before we had this big pullback, it was trading up near 170 and currently trades at 167 or 137, pardon me, with a 5% handle, on their dividend. So I like Chevron here, and I've been buying it for accounts, and I think it's when you get a chance to buy Chevron this cheap, and usually the 5% is the floor on the dividend, and that dividend's money good. I would consider that for people to say, just close your eyes and take a partial position in Chevron and add to it if the oil market firms up. And it will firm up if there's any more skirmishes in the Middle East.
On the air live with Brian Perry at BrianPerryInvesting.com. And Brian Perry, let me ask you the big question here, which I know a lot of people tune in to you to get the answer to, and that is, where are you putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Well, we've had a really good move here, and a lot of things have rallied back to what are considered to be overhead resistance here, because there's a lot of 20 and 50-day moving averages moving down through their 200-day moving averages, which makes for a tough technical trade unless you have more good news. We have a lot of really good, important economic reports coming out here between now and when the Fed meets on May 7th. That may be just as much of a driver as earnings here, Frank, going into the next week and a half, which is where all the Wall Street darlings are going to be reporting. So in here, I'm being a little bit more cautious because of, I own a lot of the big cap names, like Broadcom and Amazon and things like that, which are recovering well. But in here, I think it's okay for people because we've had this 2-day rally. A lot of the safe haven names have pulled back, and I think it's okay to pick some of those up. Names like BJ's Wholesale Club, symbol BJ, faster growing than Costco, more nimble, smaller warehouses, but they're growing fast. American Tower, it's the largest cell tower operator in the United States. They got out of the international market, and they owned Cyrus One, which is a large data center operator. I'm buying because Trump is making a big deal about the rare earth materials here. I started buying MP materials today. The symbol is MP. They're the largest rare earth miner in the United States, with big operations in Texas and Nevada, growing top-line revenues by over 60% year over year. I'm also buying Rocket Mortgage here. I'm buying a big position in Rocket Mortgage from the standpoint of, I do believe that the Fed's going to be lowering interest rates here. I do believe that inflation is heading lower, and I do believe that the refinancings and the 2 acquisitions I made recently with Mr. Cooper as well as Redfin are going to be very accretive to their earnings here going forward. The stock trades at $12, and I think it's going to go considerably higher from there.
NBA veteran Jim Jackson takes you on the court.
You get a chance to dig into my 14-year career in the NBA and also get the input from the people that will be joining. Charles Barkley.
I'm excited to be on your podcast, man. It's an honor.
Spike Lee, entrepreneur, filmmaker, Academy Award winner.
Knicks fan.
So, now you see, I got you. But also how sports brings life, passion, music, all of this together.
The Jim Jackson Show, part of the Rich Eisen Podcast Network. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Marex Corp, MRX, was one of the largest trading platforms in London. Europe has been a good trade for most, and MRX really popped their guidance higher here. They really raised their numbers here going forward on their projections. Stock trades around 39. And lastly, I do like Interactive Brokers here. The business of volatility just, it just excels the business of trading all the way around. And IBKR was up in the mid 200 area here, and currently trades down in the 162 area here. So I would look at that's a very, very well-run platform. They gave good numbers here recently, and the stock's trading around on its 200-day moving average. I think that's a nice trade.
All right, and last but not least, before I let you off the hook, a lot of volatility on United Health. That big blowout last Thursday and again on Monday, and looks like it moved slightly lower today after a bit of a rebound just yesterday, I guess. Now at 427 and change. What about United Health here?
Well, I think it's an avoid. They've, as I say, I've been saying for quite a long time here now, these big insurance operators have been found out, for padding their numbers here for years, and the trend toward rewarding these companies for what they do is now, they're facing major headwinds here. So whether it's Humana, Elevance, which used to be Anthem, United Health, which is the biggest in the world at what they do, that was a very nasty sell-off here. So this is going to be one of those stocks, even here in the month of April, that's going to be one of these tax loss selling issues. No one's going to want to own this stock at the end of the quarter if you're wearing it as a fund manager here, because it's just it shows up as a really bad trade. So I would just there's so many other things to do, and then the fact that there's a general bullseye on the healthcare industry by the Trump administration, whether it's the healthcare operators, the PBMs, which are the pharmacy benefit managers, as well as the pharmaceutical companies making all their drugs overseas. They're all in the gun sights of the Trump administration. So I just think, go where the wind is blowing behind your back and not in front of you.
Terrific. Bryan, thank you very much for that thorough analysis. As always great to speak with you. I could talk to you for hours here, so unfortunately we'll have to stop there. That's is investment expert Bryan Perry at BryanPerryInvesting.com, senior editor at Eagle Financial Publications, author of the 25% Cash Machine. It's always great to have you with us, Bryan. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Always great, Frank. Looking forward to dinner in Beverly Hills with you next time I'm out there.
Yes, we're looking forward to it, and I hope hopefully that'll happen soon. Thank you very much, right, Bryan Perry. And out to the freeways we go now, and it is gorgeous here. Let's get the latest on 790 KBC. Frank Mottek here. Want to take a moment to talk about owing taxes and my trusted friends, Ultimate Tax Group. If you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, the IRS offers Fresh Start programs. Now seize this rare chance now and call Ultimate Tax Group at 888-711-4850 and see why they are different than other firms. They will actually call the IRS with you on the phone to gather your current account information, but also will go above and beyond and request the IRS to grant you immediate protection from collections actions like bank levies and wage garnishments. Other companies charge $500 to $1,000 for that service, but Ultimate Tax Group won't. A-plus rated 5-star service with direct access to ownership and upper management while they work on your case. Just tell them Mottek sent you. Call Ultimate Tax Group now. They are the best. 888-711-4850. Again, that's 888-711-4850. They care and fight for their clients. 790 KBC welcomes Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass coming to the Dolby Theater November 15th. Tickets are on sale this Friday at Ticketmaster.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-790-5222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you are caller number 9. Call right now, 1-888-790-5222. The tickets furnished by Live Nation. Well, a taste of honey on Wall Street today. We had an up day for a change. Tip of the hat there to Herb Alpert. The Dow coming in for a closing gain of 420 points, selling at 39,606. Off the best level of the day, the Dow was up nearly 1,200 points early on. The S&P 500 of 88 back to 5,376, and the NASDAQ of 408 to 16,708. The yield in the 10-year note at 4.39%. The volatility index, the VIX index, the so-called Wall Street Fear Index, slipping 7% today. Tesla among the winners today on its earnings news yesterday. Looks like Elon Musk will be spending more time at Tesla pretty soon, and Tesla stock reacted by moving higher, up nearly $13 at $250 and change. NVIDIA also on the rebound today, back above $100, up nearly $4 at $102 and change. IBM popping more than $4 at $245.48. Oil slipping 4 cents now at 62.25. Gold all over the place lately, hitting record highs above 3,500 an ounce. Right now at around 3,323 an ounce. And silver just below $34 an ounce. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC. We have a winning day for the stock market today, in case you hadn't heard. After another wild ride, the Dow did close off its best level of the day, coming in for a closing gain of 420 points. The S&P 500 of 88 and the NASDAQ up 408 points. Closer to home here on Main Street, the city of Los Angeles could soon lay off 1,600 city employees based on the new nearly $14 billion city budget proposal unveiled this week by Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. That's because she says the city faces a nearly $1 billion budget deficit now. The LA Fire Department budget is slated to go up nearly 13% in her new proposal and include 227 new positions following the firestorms we had in January. The police department, meanwhile, will see 400 civilian members cut from its ranks. Joining us live now, the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member, retired LAPD sergeant, current reserve officer, tireless champion for the City of Angels. Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for coming to the line.
Thank you, Frank, and good afternoon to you and your wonderful listeners. I was at the mayor's news conference and listened to the comments. She glossed over the situation of the finances. She spoke for over an hour, but the issue of the finances was really couched between some very positive statements that the mayor made. Clearly, the city's got some major financial problems. I've been through this as a city council member in the past. When you spend more than you bring in, you got a problem. And clearly, they're spending much more than they're bringing in. But not mentioned was the federal government that's investigating the homeless programs that were part of the city and the county of Los Angeles to the tune of not millions, but billions of dollars. The mayor said on the Los Angeles Police Department she wants to top that off. We're not going to go to 10,000. We're not going to go to 9,000. We're going to go a little bit over 8,000. And currently, the numbers that I see are 8,735 LAPD, chief to the officer in the academy. Clearly not enough for the services provided. And today, we heard that the Department of Transportation, the parking enforcement section, we're spending more on the enforcement than the money that's being generated by the enforcement efforts, citations that are issued. So clearly the city's in some major financial problems. And I know that the mayor's proposal is going to go through committee. It's going to be hashed around in committee. It's going to go to the full council. There'll be public debate. But somehow they managed to resolve the budget by the due date. I know the mayor is in Sacramento with the city attorney trying to squeeze some money out of Sacramento, and they're already complaining that they don't have enough money. So Los Angeles really faces a crisis. In addition to that, the solution that politicians normally come up with is raise taxes and raise fees. And there are proposals to raise taxes and to raise fees and a bond measure for the taxpayers of the city of Los Angeles to pay more in taxes for services that are basic that should be provided by the city without additional sources of revenue, taxes, and fees. So I think that's what you'll see coming around the corner. They talk about 60 new fire stations. Can you imagine the cost, the land to purchase, and to build the structure, and to buy the fire trucks for 60 fire stations, and then to hire the firefighters, which can't be paid by a bond measure? That has to be a tax, so an additional sales tax or some other type of tax. So LA, I say, politically, we've got some serious financial problems around the corner, and I don't have the answers, and I hope the mayor and the city council can come up with some answers. But when you lay off city employees, you send a strong message about government services to the people of Los Angeles. In essence, your streets won't be paved, your law enforcement will be crippled, your fire department won't have sufficient resources, and you're paying extremely high taxes for a homeless population that continues to grow, in spite of comments that it's getting better. So I can get off my soapbox and listen to your comments now, Frank, because it's very, very frustrating when you go beneath the surface and you start looking and finding how serious the situation really is.
Listening to the experienced comments from the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member who's been through that budget process, also longtime LAPD sergeant, with something like, I believe, 56 years and counting of service to the City of Angels. Also, by the way, a tireless champion for the business community here. So it's always an honor to have you with us here, Dennis ZINE. And certainly the fire department getting a lot of attention, given the horrific disaster we saw this year. The police department, of course, you watch what's happening there, too. And it is to be noted, 400 civilian members cut from its ranks, and they're topping it out, he said, just over 8,000, and that's well below where Mayor Reardon had it years ago, above 10,000, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk about around the corner, we have the Olympics. We have major events coming to Los Angeles. You need to have protection for the teams, for the visitors, for the residents. You still have to respond to 9/11 calls and all the other situations that take place. I heard on the news recently there was another shooting in Los Angeles this afternoon, another officer-involved shooting. So we do have crime and we have situations, and people shouldn't have to wait 15 or 20 minutes on the telephone on a 911 call. It should be answered immediately, and there should be units responding. But when they're going to cap the police department resources, that's a tremendous loss to public safety. And when you talk about Department of Transportation that's supposed to keep the roads clear, they say they're not justifying their existence by the revenues they're generating. Apparently, they're not writing enough parking tickets, and so the revenue is not generating the salaries to pay for those people who are out there doing the job. So we've got some very serious problems with the mayor's budget's going to go to the council. They're going to dissect this. They're going to have arguments. They're going to have frustration. But somehow they'll come up with a budget. And I think going to Sacramento really was a useless task because Sacramento is not in any financial situation where they can really give money to Los Angeles. They've already helped out with the fire. And this fire is devastating. And people need to understand every one of those homes and thousands of homes that burn in businesses, there's no property tax. The property tax is gone. When you have a multi-million-dollar home, there's property tax. When you have dirt, it's going to be taxed, but not the same area that you have with those million-dollar, multi-million-dollar homes in Pacific Palisades.
It's part sports.
We have football on the brain.
Part pop culture.
Dennis Leary. True or false? You refuse to wear a glove with Mickey Mantle's signature on it for the movie The Sandlot.
The Red Sox blood, the Bruins blood, they run deep.
And in the best celebrity interviews.
Robert De Niro here on The Rich Eisen Show. How are you, sir?
Just got over a 24-hour virus.
The antidote is to appear on The Rich Eisen Show.
There you go. I would have just done it earlier.
And you've got The Rich Eisen Show podcast.
There is a medicinal quality to appearing on this program.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
So there's a big, big hit coming to Los Angeles. And the homeless situation, I don't care what people say, it's not improving. It's bad, and it's getting worse, and it continues. And people are frustrated with it, and the crime continues. So we've got a lot of problems facing Los Angeles. And as this continues down the road, taxpayers need to understand the answer to politicians is raise taxes, raise fees, raise taxes, raise fees. We know some of those fees have already been approved from the Department of Sanitation that picks up the trash. We know that's going to go up. Your water and power rate's going to go up. So seriously, the taxpayers are going to be hit against once more in the pocketbook.
The Honorable Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for taking the call on this very important story here, the financial problems at City Hall. Dennis ZINE, former LA City Council member, retired LAPD Sergeant, current reserve officer, and as I mentioned, tireless champion for the City of Angels, for all citizens as well as the business community. Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for coming to the line.
Thank you, Frank.
Out to the 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here. Want to take a moment to talk about owing taxes and my trusted friends at Ultimate Tax Group. Now, if you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, the IRS offers Fresh Start program. Seize this rare chance now and call Ultimate Tax Group. 888-711-4850 and see why they are different than other firms. They will actually call the IRS with you on the phone to gather your current account information, but will also go above and beyond that and request the IRS to grant you immediate protection from collections actions like bank levies and wage garnishments. Other companies charge $500 to $1,000 for that service, but Ultimate Tax Group won't. A-plus rated 5-star service with direct access to ownership and upper management while they work on your case. Just tell them Mottek sent you. Call Ultimate Tax Group now. They are the best. 888-711-4850. Again, that's 888-711-4850. They care and fight for their clients. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. The back and forth between the U.S. and China, a big part of the wild reactions we've seen in the financial markets lately, including today. The markets rallied today in the latest comments from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told reporters there was no unilateral offer from President Trump at this point to reduce tariffs against China. Earlier, the Wall Street Journal reported the Trump administration was considering cutting its tariffs on Chinese goods, but that the president had not made a final decision. The president making comments when asked about Treasury Secretary Bessent's remarks earlier today that the high tariff rates between the U.S. and China have effectively embargoed trade between the two economies. President Trump making the comment, signaling a potential U-turn with China on the tariff front. Let's bring in China expert now, Gordon Chang, Gatestone Institute senior fellow, author of numerous books on China, including Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, The Coming Collapse of China. The list goes on. And on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank.
Developments minute by minute here on all this. Give us the latest as you understand it. Where do we stand here between the U.S. and China on tariffs?
Well, the apparent chaos in the Trump administration has had one effect, and that is the Chinese now think that President Trump has blinked. I'm not saying that's true, but that's what the Chinese think. And what the Chinese think is important because it means that they're going to be even more intransigent. You know, I tend to think that President Trump was doing this Jedi mind trick on the Chinese, keeping everybody off balance. That's a minority view. But at the point, it's really what people in Beijing are thinking. And this does not look good from our perspective then.
All right. Looks like the president did mention a number today, 145% tariffs. And he said that 145% is very high, and it won't be that high. The president said in a question and answer session in the Oval Office, it won't be anywhere near that high. He said, quoting him, it'll come down substantially, but it will not be zero. When the dust settles, where do you think we will be with tariffs here?
I actually think that the 145% rate will stay up for quite some time. And the reason is that Xi Jinping, I think, is not in any mood to back down. And if President Trump were to reduce the tariff rate, that would be an important concession, which probably is not going to be matched by the Chinese. If it is matched by the Chinese, that's great. But if it's not, I don't see how Trump can actually change and reduce the tariff rate.
Has this been an effective embargo on trade between the U.S. and China at this point?
Yes, it has. It's had a very substantial impact in China. We're seeing these factories close, and it's not just a few of them. It seems like there's quite a lot. The Chinese economy right now is in very poor shape. If it's not contracting, it soon will be. And we see this from the price data from both February and March, which signals deflation in China. And that is inconsistent with the reported 5.4% growth for the first quarter that the National Bureau of Statistics claimed. So right now, China's not in any position to really continue this. But Xi Jinping's a tough guy, and I think he's perfectly capable of taking China off the cliff. I don't know exactly when that'll occur, of course, but what we're having, I think, is a crisis moment for the Chinese regime.
Off the cliff with the flag flying, possibly. And what about the Chinese economy? For years, we've seen these eye-popping economic growth rates in China. And, of course, COVID impacted that. When we had the news that economic growth in China was approaching zero, that was one of the big moments in the start of the COVID crisis. Where do things stand with the Chinese economy now?
I think it's contracting. We saw, for instance, tax revenue receipts down 5.3% in Q1. That's a real indication that there is a problem. Also, with the decline in imports in March is very telling, down 4.3%. That's a reflection of failure of domestic demand. The export number for March, up 12.4%, is just too good to be true. And I think what they did was they cobbled together a number in order to justify the 5.4% for the country for the quarter as a whole. This just is a pattern. We saw these incredible export numbers in December, which justified the 5.0% rate for 2024. I think they're just making up numbers at the end of reporting periods in order to justify numbers which I think are above actual performance.
Of course, the West Coast ports very reliant on business to and from China, and certainly California very close with China as far as economic activity is concerned. What do you see happening specifically between California and China with the governor indicating that he's ready to make deals, which, of course, only the president is allowed to make as head of state.
Yeah, I think that Governor Newsom's actions are irresponsible. We have one president at the time. China is a common enemy, and it seems like Newsom is treating the President of the United States as the enemy, not the General Secretary of the Communist Party of China. We Americans have got to come together, and politics has to stop at the water's edge, because this is an extremely serious situation. And we Americans, if we are not united, we could very well end up with disastrous consequences, not only for ourselves, but for others around the world.
Gordon Chang, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon. That is China expert Gordon Chang, Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow, author of numerous books. His latest, Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Thank you very much for joining us live here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money, 790 KBC.
It's part sports.
We have football on the brain.
Part pop culture.
Dennis Leary. True or false? You refuse to wear a glove with Mickey Mantle's signature on it for the movie The Sandlot.
The Red Sox blood, the Bruins blood, they run deep.
Add in the best celebrity interviews.
Robert De Niro here on The Rich Eisen Show. How are you, sir?
Just got over a 24-hour virus.
The antidote is to appear on The Rich Eisen Show.
There you go. I would have just done it earlier.
And you've got the Rich Eisen Show podcast.
There is a medicinal quality to appearing on this program.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.